The thing that I think that's relevant at the moment with talking about all the amalgamations that may happen, or the dividing up of associations or whatever, is that they do need to remember that it's nothing new. It's nothing new. It's been happening for a long time.
And leagues have changed lots of times.
Nothing stays the same forever.
Spud Jenner tells a story about a neighbour of his whose property had been in 4 different leagues.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. For sure, especially through the hills there. There's been a lot of that.
Little story. One of the elderly guys that lives in Cleve now, but where his farmhouse was, in his time of living and working on that farm, that house was actually in 4 different leagues at some stage.
That's interesting.
So without moving.
Who's that bloke?
It was one of the Noel Humphreys.
He had lived in 4 different leagues.
Yeah.
Without moving.
Mm. Yeah.
So that is in fact the history of football, as I was saying with Joe Franklin.
It's been happening for a long time, as is evident, for years and years and years. So it's nothing new. It's not as if anybody's deliberately trying to push anybody out or push anybody together. It's just a fact of life.
And either way you look at it, teams are in for a bit more travelling.
Yeah.
But what they should realise is every second week they're playing at home.
Yeah, that's right too.
For some that might be a new home.
It might be.
Yeah. But, the thing I've looked in and researched country footy for over 100 years, and the only thing that's constant in that is change.
True.
Right through, it changes, and there's no reason for the year 2020 for that to stop, and for the future we'll still keep going.
In fact, it's changes actually needed in 2020.
Yeah, well, that's something that's we've actually Wudinna we've sent a letter into the league recently, and there's been no meetings about it yet. We're having the first one, which is a president's chinwag Monday night, and then a voting meeting on it the following Monday night. But our letter that we put in was to see if the league will accept us this year as just fielding a B grade side.
I knew there was a meeting the other day, and I think I spoke to Trevor Smith in Adelaide, who'd been in contact with Tommy Seal, and he said it wouldn't look like they're only going to get one side. They tried to, or the mail I got, they tried to just go in the B grade, but the league didn't want that. So
it's, and I understand that. I absolutely understand why an association can't, because if you start that, where do you stop with it? But surely there's got to be, the clubs around and the association have got to be prepared to support in some shape or form that club, whether it be as an amalgamation or whether it be lending numbers.
Are they, like Central Air, are they as enthusiastic about merging as what Wudinna would be?
We'll always struggle for numbers here, because you see in the future Central Air could amalgamate with Wudinna, but then again once we do that it makes Wudinna Central Air and like Hawke's too strong, and the people like Wirral and Western Districts and them suffer even more, and there's no real future in sides getting done by 40 goals.
Yeah.
Because of course they're getting 15 out.
Yep.
On the track.
Yep.
They're going to get 2 sides together,
okay.
so they're battling for numbers. It's just a fact of life.
Right.
Obviously Wudinna's run out of numbers.
Yeah.
And so whether it's, I think the only question probably is whether it's the Wudinna Bulldogs or the Central Air Magpies.
Okay, right. Well,
what do you reckon it should be?
Well, it's a combination of clubs, so one club can't take everything. So I agree they've got to have to, this is just fresh news to me, but it's like anything amalgamation. You've got to take bits from both clubs and try and make it work.
But they've always been pretty good mates.
Oh yes, yeah.
Wudinna, and that's what Gary Fitz says.
Yeah, they
good
have.
mates with Wudinna and Kine Cutter.
Yep.
They hated Warren Boo, but they like Wudinna.
It's funny though. Once the amalgamation happens, it's everyone's a bit sometimes against things at the start. But if that's the best for football over there, they've got to do it.
And it brings the Norths back together, and they're basically all friends and relatives.
It'd work well, I think.
This is what Gary Fitzgerald has already said publicly, of course. Yeah. And it's Wudinna, of course, that we've got the one team at Central Air saying, of course, we're going to amalgamate with Wudinna.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all family and friends
Yeah,
anyway.
that's right. Absolutely. Well, we were only hearing today up at Wudinna with Ashley was having a conversation, and they said, yeah, that Wudinna are asking to only put in a B grade side this year unless there is some sort of and
like I said, like the best thing for our league is the survival of all clubs, like, because as soon as one lot merges, you'll start getting a bit more of a stronger team in one area, others will drop off, and then you've only got 5 sides, and then somebody else is going to have to merge. Suddenly you've only got 4, and then you're in a pickle as soon as you've only got 4 teams.
Because you're vulnerable when you've only got 4 teams.
Yeah, and you touched on it earlier, and I got sidetracked talking about us asking if we can just field a B grade side this year, but if we can get to over a period of the next couple of years where we drop off 2 senior teams and we only play 1 senior team, maybe on a modified roster where you're allowed to have 7 on the bench or something, so you don't have people missing out, something like that. That means that we will be able to survive at least for another 10 years. Western Districts, they'll be able to survive for another however period of time. And like Central Air, their average age is not as bad as what Wudinna's is and not as bad as Western Districts, but give them 4 or 5 years' time and they'll be in a similar boat. But they've got a lot of young kids, so if they can survive through a period of 6 or 7 years and those kids come up, suddenly they'll be back as a powerhouse again. Like.
Correct way.
And we're probably similar. We've probably got a lot of young lads around as well that, you know, we still want to have a club here for them when they're older. Yes. Like, but it's just how do you survive in that meantime, which is a 1-team competition might be a
temporary fix.
Might be a temporary
and that's
fix.
What you're looking for.
Yeah, that might help us for us to survive, which will help our community and help our families. Like.
Because of course B grade only came in the 70s.
Yeah.
Because there was the numbers.
Surplus of numbers.
Yeah. Lock went to Great Flinders only because they wanted to have a B grade because they had the numbers.
Yeah.
It was just the fact at the time.
Yeah.
So they went down there for B grade football. Then it was added here in the 70s. And they could take away the B grade and then add it 10 years down the track.
That's right.
And they said?
They haven't said anything yet. We're about to have a meeting about it Monday night. But yeah, so the reality is that we've only got a B grade team this year. We've got 5 A grade footballers. We've got 3 that played in our grand final last year. Dallas Waters, Henry, Mark North, and Eugene Walkup. Eugene Walkup's 43. He's been retired for 5 years. He played in our grand final last year at full forward. Like that's sort of, you know, he's buggered as well. He'll play again, but these are genuine B graders that are going to have to be playing an A grade competition, and the balance of that side is going to be made up by a couple of young fellas that have only ever been B grade footballers. They don't train, they don't have any skills, they just enjoy the club atmosphere, and a whole heap of fellas that are sort of 37 onwards up to my age, 45, that still play just so that the club's got something to do. We can't physically get ourselves up to play the pace of football for A grade week in, week out for a whole season. So
in a really high standard comp.
Yeah, so the reality is that if we have to play A grade this year, there will actually be weeks of football where there will be no senior football against Wudinna because we won't be able to get one side together. Whereas if we're only playing B grade, the 4 15-minute quarters, slower pace, our blokes will be able to do that week in, week out. But you go to 20 minutes fast-paced game, Henry's buggered hips, Fink's buggered knees, Eugene's buggered knees. Dallas is still playing some pretty good football, but he's...
For an old bloke?
He's sore all the time from it. And, you know, Liam Tree, he's sort of been trying to retire for 4 or 5 years. He'll play again, but he can't play week in, week out. He can't do it at B grade. Like. Yeah, so...
Yeah.
So
and what about netball? How are they going?
Well, netball's still okay at this stage, but they've lost quite a few this year. they'll get by this year, but they'll struggle a little bit. But the future in a couple of years' time, they're probably not going to be that good once, because the younger population in here.
Yeah, I mean and then netball comes into it too. You know, netball clubs don't need to merge, so what they form a competition separate from the football. Play Friday night. That won't work.
And that is insoluble, except that we come back to, okay, if we're going the way that it looks like we're going, and there's going to be bigger, fewer clubs, there's going to be netballers not able to get a game.
No.
You either go that way or you downsize, which maybe not as well. So Peter Wolford tells me it's not possible in Eastern Air. So Eastern Air aside, Midwest, if they went with one team each, could have Western Districts, you could have Wudinna United still, you could have Central Air. I mean, if you did away with the B grade, would it mean that Wudinna and Central Air wouldn't have to amalgamate?
Oh, definitely. And in some ways I wouldn't like to see Central Air amalgamate with Wudinna because it'll stuff up the competition.
Well, if you're going to be travelling or you're going to be involved in the sport, then you actually want to you want it to be as competitive as it can possibly be. Nobody, in all honesty, nobody enjoys whooping their opposition week in and week out.
No, on either side.
And you don't actually learn anything through that either.
That's right. In fact, good point, because you would see it with your juniors who come from really strong teams, getting to rep games and going, oh my goodness, this is a bit
exactly.
more intense.
And even like you said, you know, all of a sudden, you know, they go to association and the going gets tough and they're not sure how you get out of that, you know. A very good coach can help them with that. And
But there's nothing like experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a good competition is going to just produce better players
absolutely
that way. So if you want to keep the standard up,
then you need to look at your competition.
it's got to be even so that your rep players coming out.
Yeah. There's always going to be winners and losers, and you know, and sometimes, you know, the loser might be the same, you know, along. But as long as it's not a thumping, then, you know, I think you learn from it anyway.
Correct way, that's right. Have the netballers been consulted over any mooted changes?
Yeah, yes they have. Yeah, nothing, and. Could get in a little bit of hot water here, but you know, some of the associations sort of, you know, bring up the whole thing about Port Lincoln and they don't want to know about it and they're not interested, they don't want to travel over Winters Hill. Until I became involved down there, it's not necessarily the way that everybody up this end see it. Certainly there are at least 3 or 4 of the clubs in Lincoln who are very close with their netballers.
Wayback's being one of them?
Yeah, Wayback's being one of them. We do have a really good liaison between the two groups, and certainly we continue to have the conversation about what would happen, and constantly are looking at the fact that how we could make it work to travel out of Lincoln to play, but certainly travelling over the peninsula as much as what Ashley and I do, you hear lots, and there's no way that any football club doesn't involve their netball club because without each other, and it's just as much like netball without football is not going to survive either. So it certainly is when I first got involved, Don McSweeney, who everybody would know, it's coming up nearly 20 years ago actually, which seems unbelievable, but it is. There was a group of us who sat down and had a look at Ayers Peninsula, and we came up with a bit of a scenario, and exactly the associations and the clubs that we said back then were going to be in trouble is exactly where we are now. But back then, oh my goodness, Don and I, and Tuck was on that as well, we were the worst people going around. Like, how dare we even suggest for 1 minute that, you know, there'd be amalgamations, or that, you know, clubs might fold or anything like that. And so we asked clubs to go away and come up with a 5-year plan, and most of them struggled to even do that, to come up with a 5.
Would have been a good time to do it.
You know, like...
Because you need 5 years for a 5-year plan.
It's quite frustrating. And in fact, you know, since then, Tuck's passed away and so has Don, but... it is really interesting sitting back now and listening to the conversation and thinking, Yeah, I can remember sitting down with a group of people having this conversation all those years ago, and exactly where we said, and even the projection of school numbers that we sort of like put in to have a look at as well. It's pretty much exactly where everybody.
Because it's all happened slowly but steadily.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
in fact, you can see what happens.
Yeah.
Because it's all structural and it's to do with, like we say, the farming.
Absolutely.
So it's actually possible
And it was never
to even measure.
Yeah, exactly, and it was never about. It was always about being impartial and objective. It was never about saying that, you know, oh yeah, this club definitely has to go out and that one definitely. You know, it was never about any of that. It was about looking at what is best for what is the best way that we can be competitive all the way across the peninsula, and keep junior competitions strong as well, and not have some clubs who can't even field a team, or they're fielding a team and the opposition is beating them by 30 odd goals, not learning anything as juniors. If they're never getting to touch the ball, then they're not learning anything. And it was only ever about, let's just keep on thinking about where we may be and not just get to that point and then all of a sudden go into panic mode and think, what are we going to do? Let's have a think about the sorts of things that could be happening. And I guess, and so now they've got, Pacer, Murphy and those sorts of people who are, trying to look at those sorts of things. And you have the talks happening between Eastern Air and Great Flinders. In fact, they had another meeting Monday night.
Which is what had to happen, so
and
they are
come up
doing
with different sorts of, and they go away and they come back with something else. They came back with had a look about the programming, and they came back with a bit of a different look program, which if you're objective and you have a look at it and then you take it away and you come back and people might have the more consultation and the more people are involved in it, the more chance you've got of coming up with something that's going to work.
Do you like it?
I think that it's inevitable that something is going to have to happen across the peninsula. I didn't mind, not involved as such, but have heard about some of the ideas. Even just this morning at Air Peninsula Senior Training, one of the girls that was there was talking about the suggested program, and I said, look, I can see that could possibly work, and I can see why they took that particular program. I can then also see the other side, why they probably, the other association aren't quite ready for that just yet, but might be, in the near future. So therefore, I think the lines of communication are much more open now, because people are getting more and more aware of the number game. Yeah. And the finances and I think we were talking before about the volunteer base. Like, it is so hard these days to get,
because there's fewer people. How long have you been president now?
This is my second year as president.
So you certainly had a good year.
First year was a good year.
It certainly was. And now the challenging year.
Now we're right into the challenging year.
Oh. So this is where the greatness comes out.
Well, this is where the challenges come out, and that'll be a test of how strong the club is, whether we survive going forward or not.
Second effort's been brilliant.
Billy Bias chasing this one down. Oh, that is great work.
And knows where those goals
Tell you
are.
what, this is not far off the mark, and he's got it. Yeah. Great goal.
Last year when I took the job on, it's in 2019, one thing I'd identified just as a supporter of the club, that a lot of our old tireless workers from the last 15, 20 years had grown really, really tired, because we'd gone through such a struggle from about 2011, 2012. Struggle with numbers and struggle with supporters, players, and so...
Because they don't last forever, those stories.
They don't. So I took the job on to take a bit of pressure off those blokes and let them take a bit of a back seat.
Sabbatical.
Yeah, and we recruited a lot of our young fellas that were living not in Wudinna anymore, Adelaide and Port Lincoln. We got eight blokes come back, and we had a good year at the club.
Because it was there to do, because you had that premiership team in 2015.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That was the fellas, like Isaac, Cody Boylan, Ricky Seal, Jonty Seal. Jonty Seal, he played as a junior in 2011 B grade flag that I played in as well. He was only a kid then. He came back. He was a massive in for the club.
Gun.
Can you play in a grand final and then go backwards like that in the year?
We did. We got there after 2017 and 2018. So we won one game of footy in 2018, and that was the 100th year celebration of the club. And that was with all those young fellas coming home to play that week. So we knew we were onto something with getting them into the club, but it was only ever going to be a 12-month thing. And this year they're gone, and not only are they gone, we've lost Neil Seaman, one of our senior blokes. He's left town with work. And Matty Greatbatch, one of our rock solid midfielders, nothing fancy as far as skills go, but he's just a good,
Gets his hands on the footy.
Good, hard to tackle, but a fierce competitor, and he's left with work as well. So leaves us 5 young fellas out of that team and 3 blokes that are 39 and 2 of them are 40. So
now it's a matter of getting by, really.
Yeah, so we're in survival mode for this year. We know as a...
Test your mettle.
Yeah, we know as a club that our immediate future for survival is in recruitment, but it's an inexpensive pathway to go, and it's not something we can afford to do yearly. We can afford to recruit 3-4 blokes a year, which is not going to turn us into a match-winning side. We're still going to be struggling to win games. We need to be able to recruit 6 or 7. So next year, I'd like to think that we can go down that path again. But we're not a declining community. We're an ageing community. Like we've the average age dynamic. It's over EP. It's when I first moved up here 20 years ago, it was mid-late 20s, and now it's mid-late 30s. There's a spike in the age graph that you look at. So we need, as communities, we need to work out how we can keep our young fellas around or get them to return once they've explored life in the city or whatever. Like, because we do have a very good quality of life out here, but that's not going to go forever if we start losing football clubs.
No, and the fact with farming is then, of course, it's not going back the other way.
No.
Exactly.
And also, every club's got some stalwarts.
Yeah.
And they don't last forever.
No, they do not. No, they do not.
No.
And that, you know, that's the other thing that that people are, you know, districts are getting smaller number-wise.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. What about Eastern Air? Because of course they've had, great disparity between Rangers being incredible, Kimber being Kimber, and the other two being what? Long way.
Yeah, it's
big margins.
Again, it's
no expectation of coming there for a win.
And like when I first came here from Adelaide to in 1979, I turned up, and Cleve were the team that everybody hated. They were the most successful, so it's not hate.
No, obviously.
But they were not very well liked. But like, you know, why would you go and play for Cleve? Like, you know, but you see, they were successful. They'd won premierships. They were still winning premierships. They had really good numbers, a huge volunteer base. They were the club of that time, and. Then in 1980 decided to meet a young fellow from Cal and go to play for Cal, and I actually did find out about the rivalry between Cal and Cleve, and I was still teaching in the Cleve school, and that was a little bit difficult. But back then, you know, it was a Cleve Cal thing. It was a real Cleve Cal. Like, you know, they played in finals in netball year in and year out, and you know, every now and then Rudow might get a crack at them, or you know, but it was a real Cleve Cal rivalry, and but you know, the crowds that you would get, they were just as big then as what they are now. But there were so many more people involved.
Certainly, there's still plenty of juniors, it seems.
We've got some good junior grades, but this year, so like my daughter's grade, I think they've won the last 3 premierships at junior B, junior A level. But so out of that group that are coming through, Tay, Tomney, Mika, there's Safara, Du Bois, Moyes, they've all gone away to school this year out of that one lot. So that real dominant age group, they've lost all the superstars out of it. Like,
Inevitably, really, I guess.
yeah. So what is there? 7 on a netball side, 4 of them are gone. Well, there's 7 and I think 2.
So more than half.
Yeah.
So to survive that, yeah, well, it is pretty tough.
Yeah.
But that's when the going gets tough.
The tough get going. Yeah, well, that's sort of where we're at. Sort of, yeah. Like, as a committee, we've had lots of different conversations that have taken lots of different pathways, and it's just something that we're just looking at all the different options that are for us, and we've talked about amalgamation. Like, are we ready to fold? Like, you know, what happens if we try to amalgamate and the opposition don't want to amalgamate with us? Then what do we do? Do we shut the doors? Like, Wudinna don't actually own anything. We've got a beautiful oval over here, brand new lights. It's a great facility, but the footy club actually doesn't own it. Like, it's community club, which is a separate entity. So,
which is probably another attraction for the Central Air guys, in that because I believe they're paying for their water.
Yeah.
You're possibly not.
No, it's all done through the community
That
club.
would be advantageous to the Central Air guys. Who are your friends and relatives?
Oh shit, yeah. They're just down the road.
They are just down the
We
road.
drink with them, we work with them, we do absolutely everything with them except for play footy with them.
That's right. And as Gary Fitzgerald says, historically, Wudinna and Con Cutter have always been pretty good mates.
Yeah.
Warrenboo too.
Yeah.
It's only each other that they hate.
Well, you would have noticed there was a red and black Guernsey on our Guernseys in there, and that was because Wudinna struggled. Oh, well, only when they first started, there was a few people from Central Air that went up and played for, and they called themselves the Woodcutters because Wudinna and Con Cutter, and a few of them played for the Woodcutters for a year or two, and then we got our own B grade, and the competition got everyone Minnipa filled in, and United got a B grade, and. But they all struggle for numbers. But
Exactly, and there are enough clubs. Everybody's entitled to their opinions, and never necessarily going to keep everybody happy. But there actually are enough clubs on Ayers Peninsula at the moment to come up with 3 very well balanced associations with variety.
Because the standard's fantastic,
Yes,
really good.
absolutely. And we constantly are producing such amazing players all over, like netball and football.
I'm only talking about the footy, but Cow versus Ports is one of my favourite. It's probably my favourite game that I saw of the year. It was fantastic footy. The standard was brilliant.
Exactly. But we have so many skilled athletes on the Ayers Peninsula that it's a shame to not see them performing at their best every week. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that a player goes out against any one team and thinks, I only have to go half-hearted today, because there's no way that anybody would ever, any players would ever
But the
do
supporters
that.
are leaving at
But
three-quarter
the supporters-
time.
Yeah, exactly. That is an issue.
And that's of both clubs.
Yeah.
Because it's no fun watching your team win by 30 goals.
Yeah, or being beaten by 30 goals.
Or be beaten by. It's probably less fun, but
exactly.
it's certainly no fun watching your team 20 goals up three-quarter time.
No.
Well, it's been fun for the first quarter. The second quarter was getting a bit, third quarter was...
Exactly.
You spent it all in the car listening to or chatting.
Listening to, or going inside the club rooms.
Oh, well, might be off now. We'll see you at the pub, or we'll see you at such and such.
Go into the club rooms and watch the Crows or the Power or whatever AFL game might happen to be on.
Doesn't necessarily have to be like that.
No,
It'd be
that's
much better
right.
for what.
It is, yeah, and it is interesting times, and it will be interesting to see what sort of a scenario that they come up with, so that sport does stay competitive on Ayers Peninsula. I'm going to be very interested to see just the thing, I guess, that Don in particular would be pleased about is that there actually are talks and negotiations are going on, and that there's an open conversation now, not a closed shop. So...
You know what Don would say, and I did know Don pretty well for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
He would say, "Do what has to be done."
I know. Have known Don for before here. My father is a life member of the SANFL and was on a lot of the commissions with Don. So we had a little bit of a connection before I even came here. And so I know how passionate he was about that, you know, sometimes you just have to do what you have to do. Don't worry that Don and I had rather major disagreement over Pedlar and Kinlow Cup, where there was discussions about how that should or shouldn't continue and what it should look like or what it could look like. But a wonderful man, him and Eileen, she said, you know, Joanne, that at the moment he's not speaking to you, but in 12 months' time it'll be okay.
And it was.
And it was. Yes, it was.
Two fourth-rate characters, I dare say, who are really looking after their sports.
It was. It was a big meeting at Lock, and it was quite interesting. And
but a great.
He did tell my dad. He did tell my dad just after that meeting that I don't know who your daughter thinks she is.
Oh, really? And that from such a fine gentleman, which he was.
Really interesting. He was such a gentleman, and he meant it in the kindest way.
Oh, I imagine he would have, because he had he had gentleness with.
Yes, he did. He also has foresight. You know, like some people used to say, you know, I don't know, but he really did. He really only ever was thinking about what was best, and trying to keep
because he loved
of people happy.
Country sport.
Yeah, he did. And you know, it was. And he would have his opinion, and people are entitled to their opinion, and it may be different to yours, but you still need to listen and you still need to accept the fact that people have opinions, and you know,
because they will shape your process of decision making.
Absolutely, they will, and it is about sharing the information and sharing the opinions and agreeing sometimes to disagree. Maxine Biles and I had wonderful. I don't know whether she may or may not.
No, she didn't, but I can imagine.
She was another lady, you know, very heavily involved in top level with leadership, president, and those sorts of things with netball. And she would say there is nothing wrong with agreeing to disagree. So long as you've had the conversation and you've aired it, there is nothing wrong with agreeing to disagree and moving on. And
that's the voice of experience.
Absolutely. My dad used to be exactly the same, and that's something that I've tried to always live by. You know, you only get out of life what you put in, and sometimes it's not necessarily exactly what you wanted to get out of it, but so long as you gave it a try and you had a crack at it. And,
I think the saying goes, God gives me the strength to change the things that I can and accept the things that I can't.
Yeah.
You know, like the blokes like your Henry Swar and your Dallas Waters and your Mark North and Dallas Waters, they're still playing.
Incredible.
They played in our 2005 premiership, like when we beat the Hawks. You know, those guys, and then they've been through. So 2011, they played in the Bs won the flag that day. The A's lost it quite easily against the Hawks, and then it's been a steady spiral down for the A's to a couple of seasons of not winning a game. Those blokes are still there doing it, and
that's what I mean. They're heroes.
Yeah, well, they're club people.
Yeah, the biggest heroes.
Big hearts.
Yeah. Oh well, I hope it keeps beating. Thanks very much, Prez.
No worries, mate.
Platform 1, please line train to play. Platform 1, platform 1.